Hey guys, today we're going to be going very deep into my favorite Star Wars novel ever written. A comment I get a lot on the channel over the years are, what Star Wars books should I read and which one should I start with? And my answer is always Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. But I've never really made a full-on review and breakdown and deep dive into this novel. I've selected certain parts of it that I thought were very interesting and dove deep into those. But today we're going to take a full look at this novel and its brilliance and all the characters that it covers, well, most of them, to give you a basic understanding and a very deep dive into this book. This video won't be for everyone, but those who do watch it, I know you'll really appreciate this. So let's get started. So the novel kicks off with a very intense scene. Plaggus ruthlessly betraying his master, Darth Tenebris. They're deep in a crystal cave on the remote planet Baldemnik, when Plaggus brings down a cavern down onto Tenebris, crushing him beneath tons of stone. It's very cold, it's very brutal, and it's very Sith. As Tenebris lays dying, Plaggus chillingly reveals his true intentions. Your death comes at my bidding. The new order begins now, and will for 1,000 years remain in my control. Plaggus inherits the mantle, fully embracing the Sith imperative, dominating not by raw violence alone, but through manipulation, patience, and cunning. But things get complicated very fast. It turns out that Tenebris secretly trained another apprentice, Darth Venemus. Now, Venemus challenges Plaggus directly in an epic lightsaber duel in the book, and Plaggus initially dismisses the fight as tedious, full of unnecessary acrobatics, but soon finds himself pushed to his limits as Venemus counters every move. Eventually, Plaggus overpowers him, leaving Venemus alive, only to perform horrifying dark-side experiments on him later. It's classic Sith, domination, cruelty, in quite the equal measure. And it just shows you how sadistic and also brilliant Plaggus is, which we'll see more of in a minute. This is where Palpatine enters the scene. A charismatic, young, noble boy from Naboo, Palpatine immediately captures Plagueis' attention. The Moon Sith Lord, if you didn't know what Moon is, it's the same species that Sand Hill is of the Banking Clan in Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. So he senses immense potential and quickly draws young Palpatine into the web of the Sith. Their relationship is actually quite fascinating. It's really beautiful in this book. It's part father and son, part ruthless manipulation, part grooming, and Plagueis carefully tutors Palpatine, not only in the dark side, but also in the arts of deception, politics, and really effectively molds the future of Emperor Palpatine from the shadows. Under Plagueis, Palpatine rapidly becomes formidable. He learns extremely quickly. And not just combat and dark side powers, but the subtle art of political manipulation. And this is where Palpatine really shines. He's sadistic. He truly embodies the philosophy of the Sith. Patient, cunning, and endlessly ambitious. He never gives up. Plagueis declares to Palpatine explicitly, "You are the blade we will drive through the heart of the Senate, the Republic, and the Jedi Order." Another interesting element is Palpatine's secret apprentice, Darth Maul. Now, Maul is discovered by Palpatine as a young Zabrak on Dathomir. He's raised in absolute brutality. Plagueis initially questions Palpatine's decision, but Sidious explains Maul's role clearly. He's merely an assassin, a tool rather than a true successor. Maul's brutal training and his missions against powerful opponents, like the crime syndicate Black Sun, showcase his relentless loyalty and lethality. This is the book's first introduction to Darth Maul. Dooku himself makes subtle but yet important appearances throughout the book. His disillusionment with the Jedi Council becomes increasingly evident, and Palpatine quietly acknowledges that Dooku is grooming apprentices who themselves teeter towards the dark sides, notably Komori Vasa. Plagueis and Sidious recognize Dooku's potential as a future asset, setting the stage perfectly for his eventual turn to the Sith once Maul is done with. But the real mastery of this book, and truly what is the most evil, is the political side of this book. Plagueis and Sidious carefully engineer the Naboo crisis. They manipulate Queen Amidala so much into calling for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum, which we saw in Episode 1. They masterfully exploit her fears and the Senate's indecision to ensure Palpatine's rise as the Chancellor. Starting him off, Palpatine states, "I will fill her head in doubts about Valorum's inability to resolve the crisis. She'll not only call for a vote of no confidence, she'll flee home to be with her people." The duo meticulously craft chaos across the galaxy and they laugh about it, patiently setting conditions ripe for the Sith's return. And key point here is patient. The novel really showcases a standout duel between Plaggus and Venemus, one of the best lightsaber battles in Star Wars literature, I would say. Venemus is trained specifically to fight Plaggus. He makes the duel highly personal and intense, and eventually Plaggus triumphs, like I mentioned, but not simply through raw power, but through patience and cunning, where the fight exemplifies Sith philosophy quite well. The strongest Sith is not the most physically dominant, but the most cunning and resourceful. Now, probably the novel's most mind-blowing or controversial moments are when Plaggus experiments heavily with midichlorians to create life itself. He succeeds in prolonging life, healing fatal injuries, and ultimately triggers midichlorians to spontaneously conceive Anakin Skywalker indirectly as the Chosen One. Now, a lot of people think that Plaggus created Anakin, but it's not the case. So Plaggus essentially was trying to create the perfect dark side Force user, and the Force answered back by saying, nah, you don't do that. You don't get to tell us what to do. You don't get to control the Force. So we're going to answer you back by creating the perfect one that will bring balance. So he eventually destroyed the Jedi and he destroyed the Sith. He brought balance. So the fan theory is that Plagueis created Anakin, but it's not really the case. It's more so Anakin's birth was, it was connected to Plagueis's dark experiments, but it wasn't, I would say, the direct cause of his experiments. Now, the story is tragic, as Palpatine tells Anakin in Revenge of the Sith the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. Palpatine does eventually betray him and murders him in his sleep after getting him extremely drunk. And it is very ironic because Plagueis' obsession through the whole book, from pretty much the start of it, is his obsession with immortality. And Palpatine reflects on his betrayal by saying Plagueis the Wise was no longer wise. He had grown careless and complacent. So a lot of people, I feel like, ask, why is this story so important? What makes it so good? And for me, I would say that it's not that it just fills gaps. It really transforms our understanding of Palpatine, Anakin, and the entire prequels. It really does a good job of portraying the Sith not merely as power-hungry tyrants, but as complex figures that are driven by ambition, fear, manipulation, patience, and cunning. They're extremely cunning. Now, of course, you get different Sith, throughout the eras, but I would say Palpatine was probably the most psychotic and evil and cunning and patient. Plagueis' story is more than just a cautionary tale of ambition gone wrong. It's about the Sith philosophy taken to its darkest conclusion. It reveals the subtlety and depth of the Sith's grand plan, which we see come to fruition through Palpatine's empire. James Luceno gives us the missing piece to the puzzle of the prequels, forever changing how we view the Skywalker saga. And that's why I feel this book is just so well done, because it just fits perfectly into the 6 films. But as always, everyone has their favorite book. What do you guys think? Did Plagueis actually create Anakin, or do you believe that he was just merely a byproduct, the Force answering back? I would personally love to see a movie or a show on Darth Plagueis and young Palpatine. I think, there's a lot of people that really love Andor, and if we were to get a show that was even along the same cadence in terms of the exposition as a Plagueis and Palpatine show and story, I just think that would be pretty special. And this is another reason why seeing Plagueis for the first time in live action in canon in The Acolyte was just so off-putting, was because I don't see Plagueis doing that, and especially that wouldn't be his first introduction, just a cave dweller. Plagueis was arguably, I would say, probably the most genius Sith, or at least the most thoughtful. He really was quite the intellectual being, very patient, very smart, and I just don't think that he would be doing something like that. But anyways, I hope that if they do create a Plagueis animation or show or movie, it'll be written by someone who really adapts this novel and really is inspired by James Luceno's thought process and his respect to what came before it, which was the first 6 films, which is, the prequels and the originals. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's your favorite book? Hit like if you enjoyed this type of video, and subscribe if you're new here. I will see you all in the next video, and until then, my fellow Jedi and Sith friends, remember, the Force will be with you, always.